My name is Joy Madison. I am the University Librarian and Academic Support Director here at Benedictine University. Today, we have our wonderful advising center here, and Dr. Katie Cultivate is here to talk about cultivating a growth mindset. Katie, you want to introduce your team, and then we'll talk about that. Who's here today?
Yeah, so I've got some of our advisors here today. Some of you may know them, maybe you don't, but we have Steve Elmagori, Jennifer Horowitz, and Elena Ramos. And I'm Katie Collada, and we all work together in the advising center. If any one of us is not your advisor, you are always welcome to still come by. If you need some urgent help, whichever one of us is available can help you. If you'd rather talk to your advisor and they're not free, you can always set up an appointment with them.
And we also from the Academic Support Center and Accommodations, we have more folks here. We have Dr. Casey Larson, Science Learning Specialist, Mary Bottom, our Math Learning Specialist, Dr. Susan Roach, our Literacy for Reading and Writing Specialist, and Grace Sisto, our Interim Director of Accommodations. So we're all here to help you. We all love to see your wonderful faces in the library or the advising center. And I will let Dr. Cultivate take it away. And so this is all ready for you.
Okay.
So you can just go ahead and I think if you just use the mouse, you should be good to go. So.
And thank you, Joy, for doing these workshops. I know the students love them. We've got, as she said, here's our goal up here, and on your way out at the very end, not before then, make sure you scan the QR code so we can get your attendance and feedback. So today we're going to talk about cultivating a growth mindset. And first, I'd like you to answer a couple questions, okay? To yourself. You can write this down on a sheet of paper to yourself, on your phone, on your laptop. But I want you to think about these three things. First, what is the Okay, can you guys hear me now? See if somebody writes in the chat that they can hear.
Oh, Sarah said yes.
Awesome. See, I learned something today. We're cultivating a growth mindset. What is something you cannot do very well? Technology. So for those of you who are at home, first we asked, what is something you're really good at? Jot that down somewhere to yourself. And now we're at, what is something you cannot do very well? And then after thinking about all that, I want you to think about what is something you wish you could be better at, just can't. Is there anyone here who would like to, like a couple people who'd like to share something you feel that you're really good at? Don't be shy. I know sometimes people don't want to brag about themselves. Yes, Casey.
Converting mass to moles to number of things.
Totally. Me too. No, just kidding. Awesome. What else? Yeah. Good. Yes. Good. Good. Now, how about the next one? Something you can't do very well. It's okay to admit it. Something you feel you can't do well. Yes.
I can't motivate myself to clean my house.
Oh, I'm with you there.
I'm not.
Not much of a
I can
cleaner.
Clean, but I just can't.
Get yourself there. Okay. Who else? Yeah. Oh, either of you. Did you have your hand up?
Well, mine is just doing anything with my phone. If it rings, I can't answer it. If I get a text, I answer it in my head, but I can't ever do anything back.
Okay. And were you going to share one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm with you there too. Um, Now what is something you wish you could do better, but just can't? For me, it's anything with music. Like I have not learned how to read music. And so, and I have not been able to figure out like what a note would sound like. Okay. Now, and we'll use that example later, but that's something that I wish I could do. Anything else? Any other thing, whether it's academic, whether it's personal, something you might like to be better at?
I'm is when to use like the correct stick or something.
All right. What else?
Getting feeling less motivated at times, like struggling with consistent motivation and like discipline.
Mm-hmm. Good. I mean, these are all good examples. I just want us to kind of just start thinking about these things and kind of get your mind in there, you know, to think about these sort of things so that when we start having these conversations in a bit, some of that's already going to be on your mind. So what we're going to do next is we're going to give you a quiz. If you guys can help me pass these out. Those of you who are online, Elena's going to put a link in the chat and you can take the quiz. So as you're taking this quiz, be honest with yourself, because when I looked at the quiz, it's like you sit there and you think, yeah, I know what I should answer, but what would you really answer if you were being honest with yourself? Because putting all the right answers in there isn't gonna help you out at the end of the day. So just be blunt with yourself as you answer those questions. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that, and then we're going to give you a sheet to check your score. And those of you who are listening in, you'll be able to already have the score sheet on the link that was sent to you, but don't cheat. Wait till the end. All right, we'll give you another couple seconds here. And then we'll pass out the score sheet. All right, Steve and Jennifer are going to pass out the score sheet. Haven't finished quite yet. That's okay. You just use it when you're done. Okay, so when you are finished with that, add up your score and see what you ended up with. Strong growth mindset with some fixed ideas, fixed mindset with some growth ideas, or strong fixed mindset. And we'll talk about what these terms mean in just a moment. And I think a lot of people often, if I had to guess, are going to end up somewhere in the middle. I know I do personally, even though I'm giving you a talk on growth mindset. I guess I still have room to grow too, right? So take a look, see where you score. And take note of that, as we talk today, because if you find that you have a strong growth mindset, then you're going to learn what you're doing already that's benefiting you. But if you have fixed ideas or a fixed mindset, we'll talk today about some ways that you can challenge that a little bit. Okay. Now, one thing I want to say, like before we really start diving into this, is that I know that like a lot of this is going to be, like, let's be optimistic, let's be super positive. And my coworkers here know that I am not always like, woohoo, everything's positive, everything's sunshine. Okay. That's not what this is about. This is just about reframing the way we think about the way we're doing things. Okay. The strong growth mindset does not expect perfection, that you're going to be perfectly optimistic every time. Okay. It's just about trying to reframe the way you think about things. Okay. So let's talk about that. What exactly do we mean when we use the term mindset? So it's essentially like it's a set of beliefs. It's your attitudes that shape your perspective on the world. In particular here, we're going to be talking about how it shapes your abilities, the way you view challenges, your potential for growth, and so forth. And so your mindset, this set of beliefs and attitudes, will shape the way you respond to things. We could have mindsets about a lot of different things, about certain political topics, for example. But what we're focusing on today is your mindset about learning, about academics, about gaining new skills. How do you guys think your mindset is shaped? Yeah. Okay. Could be your experiences. What else? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, the environment that you're in. Anything else? Maybe it could do also with the way you were brought up or your culture. There's lots of things that can influence your mindset. Gotta admit somebody here. Oh, thanks. So there's lots of different things that could affect your mindset. But the one thing to bear in mind is that that doesn't mean it can't change. Okay. Your mindset right now about maybe how well you do in your history class could change. Okay. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So what exactly then is a growth mindset? A growth mindset is essentially, and this was a phrase that was coined by Harold Dweck, it's the ability to reframe perceived failures as opportunities to learn and grow. So instead of, I failed, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm done, it's, okay, I failed, what can I learn from that? All right. I'm going to give you an example of what is not a growth mindset. A family member of mine many years ago wanted to be a police officer. And he spent a lot of time focusing on what would be for getting ready for the physical fitness test. I used to teach in criminology and criminal justice, and I told him he really probably should work on the writing portion, the exam portion as well. But he said, "Oh, I got that covered. I'm fine." Well, when he went to go take the exam to become a police officer, he didn't make it. He did fine, physically, but the written exam, he didn't get the score that was needed. So I said to him, I'm like, all right, lots of people have to take this over and over again. You just got to kind of keep at it. But he never did, never went back to it. It was like he failed and that was it. He didn't want to try again. It was like, that was, I think, maybe too scary for him. And I've seen him do that in a lot of other things too. But he lost out on an opportunity potentially because he thought he could never do it. And I really think he could have, but he was too afraid to fail. So a growth mindset in the situation like that, if he had taken that approach, would have been more like, okay, apparently maybe I should have studied some more for the exam or done some practice exams for the written portion and gone ahead and started doing that and applied for some more jobs, and maybe listened to the advice of other people, not just me, but, other people as well who were telling them, yeah, give it another shot, but that would have been growth mindset, him thinking, okay, what went wrong this time? What could I do differently next time? So when we talk about the difference between a growth mindset versus what we call a fixed mindset, we can see some differences here. And when you took that quiz, it obviously was trying to gauge where you kind of fall in these two different areas. And like I said, a lot of us may just fall somewhere in between. Okay. So first off, in terms of intelligence, a growth mindset believes that intelligence and talent can be grown, whereas the fixed mindset, you can learn some things, but you can't change. It's already set. How many of you know much about like the origins of intelligence testing? Anybody? Like IQ tests? You know a little bit about that? What do you know about the origins? I was just talking about the history, like how it started. Yeah, I mean, so one of the first people to do this was Benet, and Benet created, what eventually became known as our like IQ test. This is the short version. And when he created it, he was creating it with the intent that he could learn about what different children needed and then be able to help them as a result. Okay. So knowing that he was trying to help them obviously implied he did not think intelligence was something that can't change at all. Because then what would be the point of helping them, right? Well, then some other lovely people came along, and this is the eugenics movement in the United States and other places. They took the intelligence test and decided to basically mass produce it. They started
essentially telling people your IQ was set. And then what ended up happening is that like they had immigrants coming in that they were doing IQ testing for. Some of these tests were super biased. And they would take these scores and use them sometimes for a means of deporting people, for creating immigration quotas, as well as sterilizing people, calling them imbeciles or morons. That's where a lot of that terminology came in. If you are into that kind of thing, it's really fascinating to read about how that all came about. So as a result, I think in our culture for a long time, we've had this idea that intelligence is set. You know, oh, take an IQ test. Your IQ is 102. Okay, that's it, you know. And then we just sort of make these assumptions about ourselves or other people, but that's not the case. Intelligence is something that can be changed. Another thing is that in the growth mindset, you believe that challenges are worth the effort. Whereas, you know, you think intelligence and ability cannot be improved, you know, so why make an effort? Another area can be failures can be reframed as learning opportunities. But in a fixed mindset, you think about criticism is something that's very personal. It's not, you know, just like superficial level, like you did this wrong. It's more like I'm wrong and should be avoided. Okay, so an example of that would be, let's say, take a math test and you don't do well on it. Okay, a fixed mindset might then turn around and think, I'm not good at math. This is clearly just showing that I'm no good. But a growth mindset would say, okay, I didn't do that well. What can I do to try and understand this material and learn this? And I know our learning specialists are here, you know, today, and those are the kinds of things that they can assist you with is, you know, trying to recover from those setbacks. Improvement results from balancing negative and positive feedback. All right, not just focusing on the negative feedback. I know I have a tendency to do that. Like when I used to teach and we'd get like our, you know, end of the year feedback from the students. I could have lots of people say nice things, but I would sit there and fixate on whatever was negative, and just kind of stew about that. Like, why did they say that about me? Am I really that bad? All that kind of stuff, instead of focusing on some of the positive things. And so the fixed mindset views those negative comments as more beneficial than the positive ones. And then finally, with the growth mindset, goals are something you continue working towards, even if they seem difficult. It's not like, okay, I have a goal, I didn't do it tomorrow, we're done. Okay, it's something that's a process. Whereas the fixed mindset is saying if a task is too difficult, just going to give up. Okay. How many of you have done that before? I know I have. Something seems too hard, it's like, forget it, you know? And I even see that with my own kids. They'll try something and they'll be like, yeah, I just couldn't do it, just forget it. And, you know, I sit there and I'm like, no, keep trying. And then in my head, I'm thinking, I know I probably would have done the same thing, but, you know, I'm trying to encourage them to think differently. So what I want you to think about this as we move forward. What is one thing you never thought you could do, but you actually did it? Think about that for a second. Something that, this could be when you were little, this could be now, any point in your life. Something that you thought, I'm never going to be able to do this, but you actually did it. Anybody have some examples? Yeah. Right. Yay. We all need to applaud each other, right? What else? Yeah. Make it to college. Awesome. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So there can be lots of things that in our lives that we sit there and we're like, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. But we pulled it off. Okay. But we also may have some things that we thought we'd never be able to do and still haven't done. Okay. I cannot read music. Okay. Does that mean I will never read music? No. If I want to, I could probably learn. Okay. I made a joke the other day in the car. We were passing some place in Chicago that all this graffiti was on the walls. And I'm like, in my next life, I want to come back as a graffiti artist. And I can't remember who it was in my family that said, why not now? You can do anything you put your mind to. So who knows, if you don't see me working in the advising center anymore, I've gone on to be a graffiti artist. So let's talk about how we practice a growth mindset. Okay, so this is something that I want you guys to think about over the next week. Maybe you want to write things down or keep something on your phone, like anytime something pops up, okay? The first step has to do with kind of listening to yourself. So you need to be aware of your internal dialogue, the types of things you're saying to yourself when you're faced with something that's difficult, okay? We're all going to be probably faced with something difficult at some point this week. It could be an exam. It could be an assignment. It could be trying to squeeze into a very difficult parking spot, which I'm very bad at. But I'm going to learn. It could be anything, okay? But so it could be something small, it could be something big, all right? And I want you to think about when you make that mistake or when you're faced with that difficulty or you get some type of criticism, whether it's like on a paper or a grade or, a friend says something to you, think about the situation and then what are the thoughts that pop up when it happens, Sometimes if it's negative, we might think things like, oh my God, I really suck at this. I'm the worst, just sort of these very sort of black and white views of ourselves. Like this is just the way it is. I'm never going to be able to do this. So think about when you're faced with something, what's your immediate thought? Okay. And if it isn't something positive, like, oh, that really sucked that I didn't get that, but I'm going to try again. If it's not something more positive and it tends to be something more negative, take note of that. All right. Notice that you're doing that. This is kind of the same as for anybody who has been in therapy, thinking about how we talk about ourselves in general. Okay. Like, if I'm going to be here and I'm like walking along and I hit the table, okay, my immediate thought might be, oh my God, I'm such a clumsy idiot. Okay. That's negative self-talk. Okay. Would I say that to somebody else? Like if Elena bumped into the table, I'm not going to go, Elena, you're such a clumsy idiot. No. So why do we talk to ourselves that way? It's the same thing with the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. We need to think about how we're talking about ourselves. Step 2, think about then whether those thoughts were fixed or growth. Okay. Or maybe there was a mix going on. Okay. But think about that. So your mind, you might be saying things like, I can't do this. I'm not good enough, not smart enough. I failed last time. So what's the point of even trying again? Those are all things that would be a fixed mindset. All right. Whereas if you were going to reframe those, it might be things like that you'll see in just a minute, something that sounds more positive. So try and see if you catch yourself doing these things, whether it's at school, in your academics and things like that here. If some of you, are struggling in a class or finding yourself on academic probation or whatever it may be, or you changed your major because you were having struggles, think about those kinds of things, but think about, are there ways that perhaps you could be reframing it? Or have you been overly fixed in terms of your view of the situation? So step 3 is realizing you have a choice of how to see every situation. Okay, so when you have a fixed mindset, like I said, everything is sort of like absolute. All right. But when you have a growth mindset, you tend to use words like but and so and yet and however. And I've got some examples up here. I'm having difficulty with this task, but I can learn to master it with time and effort. Or most successful people have experienced setbacks along the way. So I know the harder I try, the more likely I will be to succeed. Or I haven't been able to figure out this algebra problem yet. Okay. Instead of, I can't figure out this algebra problem. I can't. Okay. That's fixed. That means like that's never going to happen. Whereas if you're saying, I haven't figured this out yet, that shows promise. That means I still need to work at it. Step 4 is acting in line with the growth mindset. So it's one thing to sit there and say, you know, I haven't figured out this math problem yet, or I haven't written this essay correctly yet, and then just leaving it there. Okay. We got to actually act on these thoughts. So when you act on a growth mindset, these are the kinds of things you're going to be doing. Like you will take a look at an obstacle or a challenge with enthusiasm. Like this is another opportunity. Now, again, as I said at the beginning, I am not all like, you know, sunshine and flowers all the time. Okay. I know that maybe you won't be super enthusiastic all the time about facing these challenges because some of them are really, really hard, you know, especially in school. Things can be tough, but try to think, you know, long term also. Okay. If you can accomplish this, what else is that going to lead to? All right. Don't just see it as, well, I failed this, so now I'm never going to pass this class. All right. Instead, okay, I failed the class this semester. All right. This is an opportunity to do things differently next time. I'm going to think about what I did wrong last semester. I'm going to think about the things I did learn. Maybe I still have my notes, whatever it may be, but I can do things differently next time. So view it as an opportunity. And then keep trying again and receive criticism with an open mind. If you're working with your professor or a tutor or a learning specialist and they're telling you that you're doing something wrong, that doesn't mean you can't learn it. Okay, try to listen to what they're saying, try to listen to the feedback that they're giving you, take a deep breath and try to refocus. And it may take 2 more times, it may take 50 more times. Okay, but the point is that you try to keep putting in an effort. So we've got some practical resources here at Benedictine, things that could help you with your growth mindset. First, the Counseling Center. All right. And I think there's a past workshop about mental health resources later in March, I believe. I can't remember the date. But the Counseling Center is a great resource for you guys. It's free. So you don't have to like be paying anything extra when you go there. They're on the lower level of CRASA. You can just stop by if you wanted to and make an appointment, or if you go online on the website, I should have put their phone number there. If you'd prefer to call, you can call. But if you go on the website, and I think if you go to wellness, you'll see a section on that page for the Counseling Center. So if you find that you're really doing a lot of negative self-talk and a lot of fixed mindset, it might be time to talk to one of the counselors in our Counseling Center. They can kind of coach you a bit on how to reframe your thoughts and so forth. I know lots of people have different views about therapy. Like I said, I admit I've gone to therapy for many, many years. I still go. I still have things I need to work on. There's that growth mindset. Still have things I need to work on. It can be very helpful. It's sometimes just really useful to have somebody who's like not in your social circle or not in your family to be giving you feedback and insight on what you're doing and how you can be helped. I know Elena here has experience as a therapist. I assume, would you say basically the same thing about how it can help students?
They're interested in for your best, so if it means talking to another counselor, that's fine too. It's, that counselor is there for you, so if there's certain things you wanna work on, just communicate that to them. Give it a try and don't walk away, ever saying, well, there's no point in going. It's always good to try counseling, try new things. I've always said to my clients, in the past, brave people ask for help. Contrary to what the world might say, brave people are those who ask for help and receive help.
And that right there is kind of growth mindset. You know, that if I ask for, I can be brave by asking for help. So thanks. Another area is the Academic Support Center. We have, as we said, as Joy introduced them before, our learning specialists here. If you're struggling in a class, whether it's science or math or writing in particular, the learning specialists can help you with that. The Academic Support Center in general can help you with things like time management, other issues like that, study skills and so forth. They're on the 3rd floor of Kinlan. There's also tutoring, peer tutoring for specific classes. Is there anything you guys want to share that's relative to any of this that you want to tell the students?
We have candy
That's all you need, right?
and you can do it.
You can do it and they have candy. All right, so right there, what more do you need? Okay. Also, another thing I wanted to mention is if you've had accommodations in the past and you're not using them in college, you should definitely consider doing that. Grace here can help you with that. Her office is also on the 3rd floor. Using your accommodations is kind of, I would say, in line with a growth mindset, because you're sitting there and you're thinking about what can I do to take this obstacle I have and find assistance to move forward. So if you've had accommodations in high school and haven't used them here, please talk to Grace and see if you're eligible for accommodations here. Another resource is us in the Advising Center. We can help you figure out, like, if you're really torn about your major, not sure if it's the right one, you're struggling in certain classes and it's making you question your path forward or anything like that. We can talk to you about exploring different majors and trying to think about, how we can best maximize your potential, as well as talk about, if you are struggling in your major, what are some things you can be doing to try and improve or get the help that you need? Okay. I'm going to pass out, actually, you guys can help me here. Can you put that other link in? This is just a little handout I wanted to give you guys. And for those of you online, the link will be in the chat to the handout that I'm giving. It's just some more practical tips about thinking about a growth mindset. The other thing I wanted to say to you is that sometimes I think when we think about like trying to overcome obstacles or things like that, we're thinking about perfection. Okay. I've had many students who will tell me, well, I didn't turn in this assignment because I felt like it was never good enough. Okay. You don't have to be perfect. Okay. Try. All right. You may find that, maybe getting a B in a class is exactly where you're at and you're comfortable with that, or a C. Okay. It doesn't have to be an A+ every time. Give yourself a little bit of grace. So that's the only thing I would say that maybe pulls away a little bit from growth mindset, is that we don't have to be perfect. Okay. Don't beat yourself up about that. Try and just focus on improvement. Okay. So instead of perfection, think about improvement instead. Okay. Does anybody have any questions or any other things they'd like to share? Yes.
Just going off of what Elaine said about asking for help and everything, one of the things we say over the summers to new students as they come in, especially for us in the advising center, is we don't know if you're having a problem unless you tell us. So don't be afraid to tell somebody on campus if you need any help. There are plenty of people all over campus who are interested in helping you if you need it. So yeah, just come say something to us.
Absolutely.
It's sort of never too late to ask for help. So if you're a senior, you had accommodations in high school, it's never too late. Like, it's always good to get help, even if you don't know if you need it.
And can I piggyback on that in terms of when your instructors ask you, do you have any questions? It's not a rhetorical question, it's a real question. So if you do have questions, do ask them, and you don't have to do it in front of everybody in class, but make a point of talking to your professors afterwards, because, you know, if you don't let us know, we think everybody understands what's supposed to, you know, where we're going.
Right. So the key here is asking for help, asking questions, realizing it's never too late to ask for help. Yeah. Are you looking at the sheet I just handed out?
Yeah.
Okay, where are you at? What'd you say?
The last.
Intrinsic motivation? Okay, basically what it's saying is that, you try to improve yourself for your own well-being or your own pride or whatever it may be, as opposed to trying to please others. So for like, think about maybe like even when you were younger and maybe now, okay? You know, are you trying to get good grades because you know it'll make your mom happy, or you want to impress somebody, all right? That's looking for external validation. That's an external motivator, okay? Something that's an intrinsic internal motivator is something where you're just focusing on doing it for yourself. Does that make sense? All right. If there's no other questions, thank you all for coming. Before you go, make sure you get this QR code here for attendance and feedback for Joy, especially those of you who are maybe we're getting credit for a class. So make sure you use that QR code on the way out. And she also left some granola bars here. So thank you again all for coming. Have a good day.